You are sitting in complete physical safety, yet your heart is beating with the intensity of an active threat. Your breath is short, your shoulders are locked in a defensive posture, and an unsettling sensation of deep, unprovoked dread occupies your mind. You did not choose to step into this state of intense internal alarm, nor did any immediate external crisis provoke it. Yet, the physical architecture of your body is reacting as if an invisible enemy has completely surrounded you. Pop psychology frequently mislabels this prolonged state of internal friction as simple situational anxiety or a lack of resilience, telling you to combat it with shallow positive tracking or basic mindfulness protocols. But these surface-level instructions fail entirely because they treat a deep structural calibration as a minor psychological mood swing. The overwhelming sensation of living in a permanent survival loop is not a defect of your character or a temporary lapse in structural willpower. It is the direct consequence of an ancient, automated biological mechanism. Your nervous system is operating under a severe evolutionary blueprint that has systematically overridden your rational mind, locking your entire physiology into a state of chronic, unyielding hyperarousal to shield you from an imagined collapse. To understand why your body refuses to deactivate this emergency response, we must look past modern wellness cliches and isolate the literal neurobiology of fear. To map the exact architecture of chronic stress, we must first dismantle the deep scientific misconceptions surrounding the brain's primary alarm system. Deep within the temporal lobes of your brain sits the amygdala, a dual cluster of nuclei structurally engineered to act as the central smoke detector of the human nervous system. In a completely balanced biological state, the amygdala maintains a passive surveillance role, analyzing incoming sensory data from your environment and only firing a warning signal when a severe immediate threat to your survival manifests. When a real danger presents itself, the amygdala fires instantly, initiating a cascade of neurochemical changes that allow you to react before your conscious mind can even register the event. However, under conditions of prolonged modern stress, persistent cognitive friction, or unintegrated past trauma, this delicate alarm system undergoes a radical and permanent structural transformation. Brain imaging studies reveal that chronic overload causes the individual neurons within the basolateral amygdala to grow physically larger, sprouting dense new branches and forming highly sensitive neural connections. The threshold required to trigger the alarm drops to near zero, causing the system to remain locked in a state of continuous, unyielding firing that alters how you perceive reality. The moment your hyperreactive amygdala enters this state of constant, automated firing, it completely disrupts the delicate chemical balance of your brain's primary cognitive filter, the thalamus. The thalamus serves as the central sorting station for all sensory input entering your consciousness, meticulously filtering out 99% of background noise, visual clutter, and internal physical feedback, so your prefrontal networks can focus on complex external tasks. Under ordinary circumstances, this filter ensures that your daily existence feels predictable, orderly, and calm. But when the amygdala floods the nervous system with continuous warning signals, it completely hijacks the thalamic gating mechanism. The thalamus drops its filters and allows a chaotic, overwhelming influx of raw sensory data to rush into your conscious awareness. Every abrupt background sound, every slight shift in another human being's facial expression, and every minor physical fluctuation inside your own organs is flagged by the system as highly dangerous. You begin to experience your daily environment as intensely loud, unpredictable, and physically exhausting, not because the external world has changed, but because your primary biological filter has completely lost its ability to regulate incoming data. This continuous state of sensory saturation triggers a direct, destructive chemical pipeline down your brainstem to a tiny, highly specialized nucleus known as the locus coeruleus. The locus coeruleus serves as the principal site for the synthesis and distribution of norepinephrine across the entire central nervous system, acting as the master arousal switch for your cognitive brain. In a balanced nervous system, this structure fires at a slow, predictable rhythm during the day and turns off completely during sleep, allowing your mind to rest and repair. But when it is continuously bombarded by panic signals from an enlarged amygdala, the locus coeruleus locks into a state of chronic hyperarousal, bathing your cerebral cortex in a relentless flood of norepinephrine. This continuous neurochemical saturation forces your attention to become highly fragmented and erratic, instantly darting from one intrusive thought to another without your conscious consent. You find yourself entirely unable to settle into deep focus, sustain meaningful concentration, or experience a state of internal quiet because your lowest brain structures are continuously broadcasting a chemical message that a severe crisis is unfolding right now. While norepinephrine fractures your cognitive focus from within the brainstem, your hyperactive survival circuits simultaneously alter your entire physical body through the autonomic nervous system. This master regulatory system is divided into two fiercely opposing branches: the sympathetic nervous system, which drives your fight-or-flight survival responses, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which governs rest, recovery, and deep cellular digestion. In a healthy state, these two systems alternate fluidly, ensuring your body returns to absolute calm once a stressor passes. In a state of chronic hypervigilance or unintegrated trauma, however, this balance is violently destroyed. The sympathetic nervous system becomes permanently locked in the active position while the parasympathetic brake is systematically disabled. This creates a severe, continuous physiological imbalance that floods your blood vessels with a constant stream of adrenaline. Your baseline heart rate accelerates, your blood pressure rises, and your muscles remain clamped in a state of permanent somatic guarding. Your physical body is fully prepared for violent, explosive physical exertion to fight off a physical predator, but because you are simply sitting still, this massive survival energy transforms into pure, unprovoked dread. When your physical body is continuously flooded with this unprovoked survival energy, your higher cognitive centers enter a profound analytical crisis. The prefrontal cortex, which serves as the seat of human logic, reasoning, and abstract thought, cannot tolerate a severe contradiction between how your internal physiology feels and what your external environment actually looks like. If your heart is beating rapidly, your chest feels heavily constricted, and your blood is saturated with stress chemicals, your logical brain automatically assumes there must be a dangerous, terrifying reason for it. To resolve this intense cognitive dissonance, the prefrontal cortex actively begins to search your memory database and your future timeline to fabricate a threat that matches your physical panic. It will take a minor, insignificant comment from a friend, a routine financial obligation, or a vague uncertainty about tomorrow, and distort it into a catastrophic emergency. Your mind is not overthinking because it is fundamentally broken. Your mind is overthinking because it is desperately trying to invent a rational explanation for the physical stress chemicals already flooding your system. This prolonged activation of your primary survival circuits eventually triggers a secondary, highly destructive hormonal cascade known as the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This automated circuit commands your adrenal glands to release massive quantities of cortisol, the body's primary long-term stress hormone, directly into your systemic circulation. Under normal ancestral conditions, a cortisol spike is short-lived, mobilizing metabolic energy to help you survive an acute emergency before clearing out of your tissues completely within a few hours. But in a brain shaped by chronic stress or unintegrated trauma, the cortisol faucet is left permanently open, causing a continuous toxic chemical leak across your entire neural landscape. High baseline levels of cortisol act as a direct neurotoxin inside the hippocampus, the precise region responsible for memory formation, spatial mapping, and emotional context tracking. As the hippocampus experiences this continuous chemical erosion, it physically loses gray matter volume, drastically degrading its ability to accurately distinguish between a past memory of danger and your current safe reality. As your hippocampus experiences this profound chemical erosion, your brain completely loses its internal context filters, causing your past anxieties to bleed directly into your present moments. This structural breakdown is the literal neurobiological definition of trauma. When a healthy hippocampus is functioning normally, it acts as a time-stamping machine, neatly filing memories of past stressful events into the distant past, so your brain knows the danger is officially over. But when chronic cortisol exposure shrinks the hippocampal tissue, this time-stamping mechanism fails entirely. Memories of past pain, rejection, or vulnerability are left floating freely through your neural networks without an expiration date. When an external event in your daily life faintly resembles a past wound, your hyperreactive amygdala fires instantly, treating the old memory as a live, active emergency happening in the present room. You find yourself completely hijacked by intense emotional reactions that do not match your current physical reality, because your brain has structurally lost the ability to recognize that the past is officially over. While your memory centers are compromised by this toxic hormone leak, your highest evolutionary achievement, the prefrontal cortex, begins to experience functional downsizing to conserve resources. The human brain operates on an incredibly strict, unyielding metabolic budget, consuming over 20% of your body's entire energy supply, despite making up only 2% of your total body weight. Running an active, continuous survival response requires an immense amount of cellular glucose and oxygen to keep your heart pumping and your muscles tensed for battle. To protect your core vital functions during what it perceives as a prolonged existential crisis, the brain systematically limits blood flow and electrical activity to the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for abstract planning, working memory, and complex emotional regulation. This leaves you trapped entirely within your lower, primitive survival brain. Your ability to think long-term, think creatively, and regulate your primitive impulses is structurally degraded, leaving you feeling entirely detached from your intelligence and your sense of self. The relentless neurochemical signaling of a hypervigilant nervous system eventually devastates the delicate, automated architecture of human sleep. Under completely healthy conditions, the brain must experience a steep drop in core body temperature, a complete reduction in heart rate, and an absolute silencing of norepinephrine pathways to transition into deep, restorative, slow-wave sleep. But when your amygdala and locus coeruleus are locked in a continuous survival loop, your brain refuses to fully disarm its physical defenses, even when you drop into unconsciousness. It keeps you trapped in a state of light, highly fragmented sleep, frequently waking you up at the slightest background sound to ensure you are ready to fight. Furthermore, this chronic neurochemical arousal severely limits your time spent in rapid eye movement sleep, which is the precise neurological stage where the brain processes emotional trauma and resets its stress thresholds. By depriving you of this vital rest, hypervigilance ensures that you wake up with your stress receptors already saturated, trapping you in a vicious loop. The core tragedy of living with chronic stress and trauma lies in the massive evolutionary mismatch between our ancient biological wiring and modern social architecture. The human fight-or-flight response was perfectly engineered by evolution to handle acute, physical, and short-lived dangers, such as a predator attack or a sudden conflict over local resources. These primitive crises ended quickly, either through physical survival or death, allowing the nervous system to immediately return to a baseline of deep rest, repair, and parasympathetic recovery. In our modern landscape, however, our primary threats are entirely abstract, invisible, and permanent, such as career instability, financial pressure, structural isolation, and a continuous stream of global digital data. Your ancient survival circuits are structurally incapable of processing an abstract threat that never ends. They treat a difficult email, a social rejection, or a future worry with the exact same physical intensity as a physical predator, locking your biology into an endless survival response for a danger that cannot be fought or run away from. Ultimately, the heavy weight of chronic stress, persistent fear, and unintegrated trauma must be reframed, not as a psychological defect, but as a mechanical certainty. Your brain is an ancient organic survival machine performing a highly precise, automated calculation using completely distorted modern inputs. The intense physical tension in your chest, the racing thoughts, and the permanent scanning for disaster are definitive proof that your amygdala, your locus coeruleus, and your sympathetic nervous system are fully operational, working exactly as evolution intended to shield you from a perceived collapse. By stripping away the layer of personal frustration and analyzing this intense daily friction through the cold clarity of neurobiology, the structural reality of the human mind becomes entirely clear. Your brain is not broken or permanently damaged. It is simply overprotecting you in a world it was never evolved to fully understand. This concludes our deep diagnostic investigation into the physical anatomy of the stress and fear response.